What is going on YouTube? This is Lawrence over at Mighty Comics and Collectibles, and we are back with another Hot 10 list. This time, the Key Collector app has shot out some amazing keys to go over this week. And of course, like always, I'm going to tell you if I'd be buying these books at these prices or kind of staying away or even possibly selling if I own them. But before we get started in the video, like always, if you are not a current subscriber of the channel and you've been digging my content, I want you to go ahead and click that subscribe button for me. And of course, I want you to smash that like button if you like the content I'm putting out there as well. But most of all, I want you to go ahead and drop the comments down below. Let me know what you think of this list. If you guys own any of the books on this list, do you think the prices are too high? Maybe something you stay away from? Let me know down below because I always go through all the comments and read everything. So without further ado, we're going to jump in at number 10, and it is a mega key. Amazing Spider-Man #1, the second appearance of Spider-Man, the first appearance of the Chameleon, and of course the first crossover between Spider-Man and the Fantastic Four. The CGC 1.0 recently sold this month for $8,869, and that is just an amazing price from where we are from a few years ago. I picked up my copy, which has actually turned out to be a 0.5 because it's missing the back cover. I paid $2,200 for my copy, but it looks like a 4.0, so that's why I was able to pick it up. Either way, I'm happy to own that book right from before as opposed to now, because this is a pretty penny to spend on this Silver Age key. My opinion is that I'd always be buying this book no matter what. It is one of the few Silver Age keys that'll always go up in value. So if you can afford this book, I'd always add it to my collection. Just try and make sure it's complete, make sure there's no resto, and I think you're off to the races with this one. It is really an amazing book, and I definitely add it. At number 9 this week is another second appearance, the second appearance of Dr. Octopus, Amazing Spider-Man #11. I know I've told you guys a million times I'm not a huge second appearance collector, but because this book is a Silver Age Amazing Spider-Man, it is definitely worth owning. A CGC 6.5 recently just sold for $1,560. To me, that is a little bit of much to spend on this book. However, if you can get a lower grade copy that's complete, no resto, even if it's raw, I'd be buying this book as well and adding it to collection. I remember I picked up my copy, I think about a year and a half ago, for around 250 bucks. Totally worth it. One of my all-time favorite early Amazing Spider-Man covers, so I definitely add this one if you could afford it. At number 8 this week is another monster key. Tales of Suspense #39, the first appearance of Iron Man. I am not sure why this book is all of a sudden skyrocketing. It is a blue chip grail, and that is probably the reason. Definitely worth owning this book no matter what, as long as it's complete and no resto, like I always say. CGC 3.5 recently sold. Have a seat. $13,000. To me, that is a lot of money to spend for this book, but it is worth it. This is, like I said, it's a mega grail and always will go up in value. It is an investment book, an investment type of key. If you have the type of money to lay out for this book, I'd always be buying it if you can get it for undervalue. At number 7 this week is another Amazing Spider-Man book, number 41, the first appearance of the Rhino. We have talked about this book in the past. Recently, over the past couple of weeks, this book has gotten hot. There have been some rumors that the Rhino will appear in No Way Home. I am not too sure about. I've always said that this and Amazing Spider-Man 20 are two of the most underrated Silver Age Amazing Spider-Man books, and they are not given enough credit. Check this out. A CGC 4.5 recently sold this week for $575. And guess whose book that was? Yours truly on eBay. I recently sold that book to someone on eBay. I guess it was a high sale for that great amount, which is great. But either way, I'd be definitely picking up this book. I know I sold my copy, but the only reason I sold it is because I have a raw copy, and I also have a 4.5 signed copy by John Romita. So I really didn't think I needed 3 copies of that book, so I held on and went ahead and sold one of them to a lucky customer on eBay. But either way, I'd definitely be picking up this book, not just because he may appear in No Way Home, because I believe it is a Silver Age, undervalued Amazing Spider-Man key. At number 6 this week is a book that we saw on the list last week, Uncanny X-Men #64, the first appearance of Sunfire. Now, I know I said this last week that I'd be buying this book if I saw it for a good price, and I said that I will repeat it again. If you could find this book for a decent price in the lower grades, I would definitely be picking it up. A CGC 6.5 just sold last week for $396. To me, I definitely don't think that's a bad price. If we can come a little bit lower and probably spend around $250, it's kind of where I'm comfortable. But I'd be definitely picking this book up if I could to add it to collection, because I do believe when the X-Men show up in the MCU, we're going to see characters that we have not seen before in the movie. So I'm betting on this one probably coming at some point. I don't know when, but now is a good time to snatch this one up if you think he's coming, if you think it's worth adding to your collection. At number 5 this week is a book that was on the list last week. Again, Amazing Spider-Man number 5, the first Spider-Man versus Daredevil crossover. I said last week that I do think this book is worth owning because it is a Silver Age Amazing Spider-Man book, and I'm holding to that. However, I will say this, I am not paying up for a high grade of this book. I also said that this is a nice alternative to have if you cannot afford the first appearance of Doctor Doom. Amazing, I think, Fantastic Four Annual number 1, I think, is the first, another appearance of Doctor Doom. And this one is probably the third one that I would pick up if you're a Doctor Doom fan. Now, a CGC 1.8 recently sold of this book for $650. And that to me is a pretty penny for a 1.8 copy of this book. Again, a really nice Silver Age key. If you could find one for a better price, I'm all about snatching it and adding it to the collection. Like I said, especially if you're a Doctor Doom fan and you're an Amazing Spider-Man fan. But I really don't want to shell out too much money for this book, only because to me, yes, it's the first time they meet, but it's really not a huge key past that. I probably want to put my money towards something else, but it's something I definitely would buy. At number 4 this week is another book that was on the list last week, and it is another Amazing Spider-Man key. Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 1, and this book just keeps climbing higher and higher and higher as closer we get to No Way Home. Now, a CGC 9.2 sale last week for $24,000. Now that is a pretty penny for the first appearance of the Sinister Six. I will say this, you're probably not going to see too many sales in the high grades. We've talked about this before, being that it's a square-bound book, and this book must have been read to hell by many of the people out there, because I always see this book in really low grades with detached covers, detached back covers. I really haven't seen many high grades. I know I saw a 6.5 recently, somebody trying to sell it on Instagram for a pretty penny. 9.2 for $24,000 is a lot of money to shell out. But either way, I'm all for owning this book in any grade that you can afford it. I personally myself, I think I have a 1.8 copy, and I was fine with that. I paid $250 for my copy a couple of years back raw. God knows what that book's worth now. It's actually crazily priced. I'm always going to repeat this when we talk about this book. I'd rather own the individual first appearances of each member of the Sinister Six rather than this book, but this is a nice alternative to have, and I definitely want it in my collection. At number 3 this week is another book we just talked about, Amazing Spider-Man number 20, the first appearance of the Scorpion. Now, anybody who religiously watches my channel knows that I have picked up this book recently over the past 3 or 4 months. I actually have 3 copies of it now, 1 graded and 2 raw copies. If you guys haven't checked out that video, I actually picked up a 3.0 that was slabbed, and I cracked it and pressed it. It actually came out beautiful. Again, another big key that we're specking on for No Way Home. Anybody who hasn't checked out that toy leak, there's been a Scorpion-like figure toy leak, so I'm not sure what they're trying to get away with here in these MCU movies going forward, but check out this toy leak. I'm going to throw it up on the video so you can see what I'm talking about. It is almost like a Scorpion-like tank figure. I don't know. I hope we don't get that. I hope we actually get a actual Scorpion in an actual costume. Here's hoping for that. But either way, a CGC 6.0 recently sold this week for $1,550, which is a pretty penny for this key. It is really probably the cheapest, villain we could buy for a Silver Age Spider-Man character, him and the Rhino. These books are steadily creeping up. If you don't own a copy of these books, now's the time to pounce on them. I do think it's worth owning. I own 3 copies, like I said. So if you don't own it and you're a Spider-Man fan, now's the time, because if he does show up in No Way Home, all bets are off, and this book is going to go even higher. At number 2 this week is a book we haven't seen in quite some time. Sergeant Fury number 1, the first appearance of Sergeant Nick Fury and the Howling Commandos. Now, this is a book that hasn't been on my radar. I'm actually shocked to see it go so high and be number 2 on this list without even being anywhere over the past month. A CGC 5.5 recently sold last week for $3,747, which is quite the big penny. Again, this is a nice Silver Age key. I'm all for it, but however, this is a lot of money to spend on a character we're probably never going to see in the MCU. We got a different Nick Fury in our MCU. So to me, if you're a completist and you want to own all the, first appearance characters of these Marvel things, maybe you want to spend this kind of money. But for me, I'm not shelling it out. I would not buy it right here. If you could find one for low grade that's cheap and you want to add it, I'm all for it. Other than that, I'm not shelling out that kind of cash for this book. At the top spot this week is the granddaddy of them all, The biggest book, in my opinion, in the comic industry. No, I'm not talking about Action Comics #1. No, I'm not talking about Detective Comics 27. I'm talking about the greatest superhero in existence.
Spider-Man!
Amazing Fantasy 15. I don't know if you guys have all heard about this, but the mega sale that just occurred on the auction site, I'm not sure which auction site it was, is CGC 9.6 recently sold, and this has to be the highest grade copy out there, I would assume, for $3,600,000. And that to me is insanity. That is the highest price a comic book has ever sold for. Now, Amazing Fantasy 15 is not only the first appearance of Spider-Man, as we know it is the first appearance of Uncle Ben, Aunt May, Flash Thompson, and so on and so forth. To me, this is a mega key. If you can afford this book, I would highly suggest owning it. This is probably the biggest investment book there is. Like I said, we mentioned Action 1, we mentioned Detective Comics 27. This book is readily more available than those two books are. So if you can get a copy of this book, I'd always be buying it no matter what, because in 20, 30 years down the line, we may be talking about a low-grade book that's worth $100,000. Right now, I see people listing their copies. I just saw a 2.0 listed for $30,000 and a 2.5, I think, listed for $40,000. So to me, these books are absolutely going to keep going higher, especially with this big $3.6 million sale. For the people that can't go out there and snatch one of these, I mean, it is really great to see these books go for such great prices. It actually dragging up all the other comic books with it. I actually owned 3 copies of this books at one point in my life. When I first started recollecting comics, probably around the early 2000s, I bought a raw copy, which actually I got graded and came back at 2.5, and I paid $4,000 for that book. Could you imagine? That book's now a $30,000 book. I purchased another raw copy a few years back, had it graded, it came back at 1.5. I sold that for $18,000 and change, and I paid $10,000 and change for it, so I made a pretty penny on that. And then, not too long ago, I purchased my Amazing Fantasy 15 signed by the great Stan Lee, and I paid a nice chuck and change for that as well, and it's probably worth about $40,000 right now, which is absolutely astonishing from where this book has gone. So, like always, guys, let me know what you think of this list. There's some big bangers on this list and some amazing books. Would you be buying some of this stuff? Would you be holding off? If you could afford Amazing Fantasy 15 right now at these prices, would you buy it? Because I'm always interested to know what you guys have to say. So, like always, this is Lawrence over at Mighty Comics and Collectibles saying thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you guys soon.